Simultaneous equations assignment, you'll see on the sheet here, there's three parts to it. You'll see the instructions there, so all three sheets must be completed. All working must be shown for each question. Attach the answer to the sheet. So I've got the working space in the thing to put it. All working must be shown. Okay, so first one, sheet one, there's a puzzle sheet, so what do dancers get if they overeat? You've got to find the answer. But the instruction there is you need to plot the graphs and solve graphically. Today's lesson I'm going to show you how to do that. Is that understood? Do a couple of examples on the board, then you will try the sheet and you might get half of this done, maybe all of it done. My advice is go home and finish it tonight. Right, so it's assignment. It's going to be 3 parts. Tomorrow's class, do I have you tomorrow?
I'm pretty sure you do.
I think I've got you a couple more times this week anyhow. Yeah. Each lesson I'm going to show you the next technique for the next sheet. Is that understood? Yeah. And we'll film it and for the others can do it. Now, so the due date's going to be next week sometime. Don't worry too much about that. Wait till everyone's back and I'll give you a date when I find what I've done. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to do the first question. And I'm actually going to do the first one as an example. So I'm going to do number 1 and number 2 as an example for you. So what you need to do is, if you turn to the first page there, you'll see why do dancers get if they overeat. Now this work is something we all know how to do. It's nothing new, but our sheet 2 and sheet 3 is new techniques, new lessons. You have to learn something new. Alright, here you'll see there's 8 questions and there's 2 equations in each question. And what you have to do on the graphs provided, you'll see I've given you on the next 2 pages 8 grids, 1 for each question. On each grid you need to draw the 2 graphs. On each grid you need to draw the 2 graphs, and where the 2 graphs intersect, that's the point we're looking for. It's called the point of intersection. And that's solving where these 2 graphs have a point in common. So if you have 2 lines, if you think about 2 pair of straight lines, if they're parallel, they'll never have a point of intersection. If they cross each other, they'll have 1 point of intersection. Can be oblique, can be perpendicular. Right? Or, the third case, a bit of a trivial case, if they're exactly the same line, then there'd be an infinite number of solutions, because there'd be hundreds of millions of solutions. We'd better add up how many there are, because it's exactly on top of each other. But the ones we're doing today only cross at 1 point. Right, so the first question there, you'll see it's got y equals, is it x plus 1?
Yeah.
And the second rule is what?
Y equals 2x.
Okay, so on your grid, on the first grid, I'll just do my grid here. Now, we need accurate here, so I'm going to actually put markings in for once. And I'm going to try and make it look as accurate as possible. But you've got a grid already provided for you. So on the first grid, go to that. Now you'll notice the y and the x on the grids are actually turned sideways. Can anyone see the y and x? So you actually have to turn it on its side. Right? So have the y pointing up, so you'll need to turn it this way. Like this. You'll see the y is up the top when I do it this way, isn't it? No, it's this way, sorry. So, what you might need to do first on this first corner, put number 1, so you know which graph it is, which pair you're doing. Right, we look at one rule at a time. So I'm going to look at the first rule here, y equals x plus 1. This is in the form of mx plus 1. What's the gradient of this graph?
1.
And what's the y-intercept?
1.
So you might want to write that next to it somewhere, m equals 1, c equals 1. So maybe back on the first page, write down the gradient and the y-intercept. For the second one, while you're on that page, you can tell me what the gradient of this line is. Gradient is 2, what's the y-intercept? What's added on the end?
0.
0, so c equals 0. Okay, if we've got the gradient and the y-intercept, we use that method 1 technique to sketch the graph. We're actually plotting the graph. So I look at the first graph, the y-intercept is 1, so I put a dot there, mark it as 0, 1. Go through the y-axis at 1. Everyone got that much? Okay. Then it says the gradient is 1, so that means I've got to go up 1 for 1 across, doesn't it? So I go up 1, 1 across, I get to this point here. This is actually the coordinate 1, 2. This is where you need to use a straight edge. You need to use a ruler for this. You have to be accurate. Alright, if you draw your straight line through there, and should go through where y equals -1, is it? Where x is -1, the x-intercept to be -1 if you draw it properly. So you really have to be accurate at this point. You really have to draw your lines really spot on. Is that understood? If you don't, you won't get them right. So that line was y equals x plus 1. So everyone got that first bit done?
Yep.
Okay, then I go to the second graph. And I'll use a second colour for this so you can see the difference. Use nice red to stand out. Got M and C, so we start with C. The y-intercept here is 0, so it goes through the origin. 0, 0. Everyone happy with that? Okay, and the gradient here is 2, so that means, remember we can write that as a fraction, that's 2 over 1. So from that point I go up 2 and across 1. Actually goes through the same point there, 1, 2, doesn't it? Then I get my ruler out and draw my second graph. You might remember from the work we did last week that if there's no number added on the end, it goes through the origin, doesn't it? That was one of those special lines we did when we did vertical and horizontal lines. Then we had, in the same exercise, had the ones where they didn't have a C on the end. Okay, these two graphs cross at one point. What point is it?
1, 1, 2.
Okay, so that's the answer we're looking for, the coordinate 1, 2. That's the point of intersection. That's when those two graphs are equal. So you go back to your grid. On your grid here, if you look down the code, look for the point 1, 2. What letter is it? L. Yes, it is, the third one down. So, for question 1, you've got to put L. So on the code here, everywhere you see 1, you put an L. People fill that in now? Mm-hmm. Who thinks they need a second example of this done? So for the second one, we've got these two rules. Y equals x plus 4 and y equals 2x plus 5. So the first thing we should do is work out what the gradient and the y-intercept is for each of them. So what's the gradient and y-intercept for the first one? Gradient is
1,
y-intercept.
4,
For the second one, the gradient is 2 and the y-intercept is?
5.
That's your starting point. And then you sketch the two graphs from that point. I'll let you get going with that. If you need any help, a bit more help, I'll